In this episode, I'm going to share with you a conversation I have with one of our therapeers. We talk about things like accountability and free will and parenting, all in relation to the polyvagal theory. My name is Justin Sinceri. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. Welcome to Stuck Not Broken. This is not therapy, nor is it intended to be therapy. It's also not clinical consultation for you, and nor is it intended to be that. However, if you are interested in talking to me one-on-one on more of a professional basis and you need some clarification, head on over to justinlmft.com, and there's a consult page now where you can reach out to me and set up a consult so you can talk about these more professional level things one-on-one. It is not therapy. It's not exactly clinical consultation. It's more like, hey, I don't understand whatever it is, polyvagal theory in particular, maybe. I don't get this, and I need to talk to you one-on-one just to get some clarification on, am I understanding this right, or am I applying this correctly in my practice? So justinlmft.com, and head on over to the consult page, and you can reach out to me from there if you're interested in that. So Kelly is one of those people, and she allowed me to record this. It's Kelly Laporta, and you can find out more about her on kellylaportacounseling.com. I'll have a link in the description. kellylaportacounseling.com. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoy this conversation. It was a ton of fun. This is not stuff I typically go into on the podcast, not exactly things I've been meaning to, but she just brought this opportunity for us to go in depth into some really fun conversations, and I hope you enjoy it as well.
I'm like learning polyvagal. I've been learning about it, for the past, year or so, probably.
Yeah.
Just finished Deb Dana's course. It was super helpful, but I feel like I just had more questions and there wasn't a ton of space to do like one-on-one, question answer. So I was well, man, he's really knowledgeable in this stuff. So maybe I can reach out to him and get some, who knows? So
we'll see. Yeah. Hopefully I can address whatever it is you need. So what's going on?
So the thing that I'm working on right now is I'm really focusing on like providing content for parents who are, wanting to learn more about the nervous system and parenting through a nervous system lens. And I'm loving it. I've been trying to do this with my own kids. It's been super helpful, but there are a few things that I'm getting a little bit, I'm just like getting caught up in. And I think part of it is like my history being psychologically trained, right? For the past 12 years, introducing polyvagal theory, trying to understand like, where's the connection and the overlap? What things am I deconstructing, be it parenting, psychology, what am I holding on to? And I'm like, so the big thing that I'm kind of working through right now is discipline and boundaries with a nervous system perspective, and what that looks like with my own kids. When I first got into polyvagal, I was like, all right, I'm going to like see how things shift in our household. If I like provide a lot of safety cues for my kids and kind of learn their individual safety cues, like what sends them into fight or flight. And that was super helpful. I was like, this is awesome. I am seeing that they're like more cooperative and engaging as I do this. But then when it comes to discipline and boundaries, and there's obviously times when I have to like, draw the line somewhere. I feel like I then become a danger cue in those moments to them where it's like, mom is like, they're dysregulated. They're doing this behavior. And then I'm trying to like, set a boundary at that, really trying to navigate like that I'm staying regulated in those moments myself. But then I'm like, God, am I like sending them more down their ladder?
Okay. Part of this is your own parenting. Part of this is course creation or content creation around parenting. But it sounds like you also want to be able to apply this in your own home.
Yes.
Because it's like, you don't want to just say the thing, you want to
do
the thing. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And I want to try and address this like generally. Okay. The parenting thing is I'm with you. So when it comes to discipline and boundaries, there doesn't seem to be a clear connection with polyvagal theory in a way that we want it to connect. It does connect.
It does.
And so, it kind of has to, right? But so when you talk about parents that become the danger cue, and I would say yes. So the question now becomes, is it our role to avoid that or to embrace that in a healthy way?
Yes.
Because because it's like, let's take it to a wild example, just to make, like, illustrate a point. Let's say we have, I don't want to say narcissistic because everyone says that. Let's say we have a husband, just very stereotypical example, who is easily triggered and abusive, right? Is his partner, are they not allowed to put a healthy boundary in place, even if it sounds angry, even if it sounds powerful, even if it comes from their own fight energy? It's probably going to trigger the husband, but aren't they allowed to speak from their power? Aren't they allowed to speak from? Now, I think that speaking from power and speaking from fight are different.
That's helpful.
Yeah, very different. So, as parents, if we're yelling and shaming and name calling, that's not power. That's fight. That's an attempt to dominate. That's different than, this is what I expect out of you. If you don't do this, here's how I will respond. It's your choice. To me, there's more, you don't have to yell about that. It's like, this is the rule. You will follow through. I don't have to have a lot of vocal prosody to deliver that. So is that unhealthy fight, or is that clear boundaries, expectations that any parent could put in? That's where that's kind of how I view this. Is I don't see the utility. If you can parent with no consequences, awesome. Like, more power to you. Make a course about it. Not just you, anybody.
Yeah, sure. I don't think that's possible. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. It doesn't feel possible to me. Like, my kids are going to have I want them to have expectations. Like, I want them to kind of know what to grow.
So do I.
So
do I. So on that level, I think that when people hear political theory, kind of like where you're coming from, it's, you hear the theory and you hear about danger cues, safety cues. So it's like, we get in our mind, I always want to be a safety cue. And I'm like, yeah, but there are times where we have to be assertive.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's bad. And I don't think it's bad for parents to do that. I don't think it's bad for any sort of communication, any sort of interaction, for you to be like, no, this is my line. And this is what I expect out of you. And that might be putting an employee in check. Like, no, I'm your boss, and this is what I need from you. That might be putting your boss in check and say, I will not be treated this way. This is what I expect out of you as my boss. I'll respect you, but this is how I expect to be treated. And I don't see why that would be different for our own kids.
Yep, that's super helpful. And on some level, probably would be really, I mean, there is safety in knowing the expectations. I was thinking about that the other day, right? Like, if I'm at a job, I want my boss to be like, Kelly, here's what I expect from you. This is what we're hoping for you. I want to know that feels containing. Yeah.
I work with teenagers, and they have to know the line. They have to know that the adults in their life care, but not like this unending, what's the word? Cotton candy love fest. Like, they don't need that. They don't need relentless safety cues. What they need is, and they will say, I need to know the line. I need someone to push back. I need healthy boundaries. They don't need someone chastising them and yelling at them and saying what's wrong with you. But they do need to know, this is what we expect out of you. And we believe in the best. We believe in you. We expect the best out of you. But here's the behavior that is okay, and here's what's not okay. And there's plenty of wiggle room. That's not the issue. But they have to have that. And I've working in a school district, I see is that as that expectation blurs, the results are not good. So as that widens and blurs, and it's like, there's no standard, there's no positive expectation, there's no accountability, and the kids will match that. That is an expectation. When you're not communicating expectations to them, that is an expectation. It's like, have at it. We'll follow your lead. And I don't think that's actually a whole other angle you could look at this as, is even like on an evolutionary level, like, who was the leader of the tribe? Who was the leader of the family? And I would hope it's the adults. And the kids were seeing what the adults were modeling and following in their footsteps. So I would hope that makes sense to me. That doesn't mean we have to be jerks about it at all.
Yeah, that's super helpful. The approach I've been trying to kind of take, but it has its drawbacks, is like, if my kids are going through something, like allowing them to come back to regulation and then kind of talking about things after, but that's not
Yeah.
always helpful, because sometimes it's like, if you hit your sister, or if you are like, there in that moment, there does have to be, and there are some instances that I do have to immediately implement something. Oftentimes I can be like, all right, like we can, I don't have to address this right now. You're like clearly down your ladder, and we'll circle back to that. But sometimes I do feel like I have to.
I would look at it like, okay, so like first off, being down the ladder is not a bad thing,
Right.
unless you're running in the street, hitting somebody, cursing at somebody. Like as long as you're not violating these clear social norms and safety norms,
Yes.
it's okay. It's okay to be down the ladder, and kids can regulate their way up. They can accept our co-regulation once they're ready to.
Yeah.
So like
Yep.
that, I think as parents, we have to be comfortable with our kids being in distress. And that's very normal for them to feel like, I don't give timeouts I can't remember the last time I gave a timeout. They're pretty effective when done right.
Yeah.
And so the last time my son had a timeout, or my daughter, he felt guilt. He felt probably some shame. But you did what you did to earn that, and the natural consequence is probably feeling a little bit rejected and feeling a little bit of shame. And that doesn't mean I'm shaming you. It means you feel ashamed. Means you feel some guilt. Sure. It doesn't mean that I'm actively doing that to you. So to me, it's like this was the boundary. You made your choice, and whether they're regulated or dysregulated, like you made this choice. We have to look at it that way, in my opinion, as far as accountability. Otherwise, it's like a free for all. And so, yeah, when he's on timeout, he'll feel ashamed. He'll probably feel angry at me. He'll feel some guilt. I'm just gonna let him feel that. And then when he comes out of it, then we can call it a repair. We can do a co-regulation. We can connect. And I'll try and do these things ahead of time. But like at some point, it's just you did what you did.
Right.
And after all the warnings you got, after all my attempts to co-regulate with you, or even put you in check, like you still did the thing you did. I have to follow through. And now you feel the way you feel. But it's like, I have to be okay with that as a parent. I have to be okay with seeing my kids in some level of distress and letting them feel their feelings and then come out of it. And I can absolutely help them with them after the fact.
Yes.
But the consequence is the consequence. And those feelings, I think, are part of the consequence.
Yeah. Okay. You just hit on like two things that I wanted to talk about in that was helpful. So the one piece that I'm kind of also working through is this idea of, you said like allowing them to feel the stress and feeling their emotion. And sometimes I worry with polyvagal theory that maybe there's this, or maybe I just have made this focus, but there's this focus on like coming to regulation. And I worry sometimes that maybe takes away from someone's experience of feeling their full emotion. It's like something might come up and it's, it's like, well, okay, take your deep breaths, come back to regulation. It's like, well, maybe you just need to feel your feelings.
Oh,
for a
totally.
little,
yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been in Deb Dana's class thing. Was that kind of the vibe that you got from it?
I think that, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that.
More like after the fact.
Maybe it was after the fact. Yeah. Just this idea of like, they definitely would say like, it's not bad to be dysregulated, right? Of course. No. But the hope is that we can have flexibility within our systems and come back to regulation. And so I'm working, I work with adult clients. I don't actually work with children. This is more for my own parenting and this course I'm making. But if my clients are going through something, like I don't want to immediately be like, okay, well, what are your regulating resources? It's like, well, I want you to feel what you're feeling. You need to, that's deactivating too. That's regulating to feel the emotion.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So that's okay. Okay. I guess I'm like,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, what's not okay? How am I?
Yeah. I think that, so the way I conceptualize this is feeling your feelings is as long as you can tolerate. So as long as the vagal brake is active, as long as you're grounded enough in the safety state, as long as you're grounded enough. And that's my goal, is because we can, as therapists, we can push and get our clients to feel all kinds of stuff. That's not what we want. Sure. Right. Sure. So my priority as a therapist is, are you grounded in the present moment? Are you able to feel whatever comes up for you? And so dysregulation and just feeling your feelings, those are different things. Okay. Dysregulation means you've lost access to your safety state. You're in fight, you're in freeze, you're in like a shutdown. And these things are like out of control. We'll put it that way.
Okay.
That's what I consider dysregulation. Like you're really just gone.
That's super. Okay.
But
So if you have a foot in ventral, it's like you are still
oh yeah,
like, yeah. That's super
yeah.
helpful.
Deb calls it having a foot or like a toe in the water or something like that, right? Is that what she
Okay.
calls
So
it?
I don't remember that, but
Okay.
maybe she
I
might.
think when I
So,
talked to her, she said as long as I have a toe in the ventral water or something like that.
okay. So that's not actually considered, like, in your opinion, like dysregulation. It's more when you have completely like kind of lost access to that safety state.
That's what I would consider
Okay.
the students I work with when they're, marching across the campus swearing up a storm. That's dysregulated. When they're in
Yeah.
my office talking about how angry they are and they're crying and they
Yeah.
want to hurt someone, but they're there with me and they can talk about it, that's regulated enough.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, that doesn't worry me at all. Once they get up or once I
Yeah.
feel like, oh, I'm really losing you, like that's where I get worried. So
I
as
see.
long as someone or even someone, like adults, as long as, or anybody, not just adults,
Yeah.
as long as we're anchored enough in safety
Yep.
to feel the defensive feelings, that's healthy and okay. And that is self-regulation. That's where
Yeah.
we want to go.
Yeah. Okay. And that actually kind of makes sense too, in terms of thinking about kids. Like my kid can be frustrated or irritated at me, right? Because I'm holding a boundary, but they still have that foot in that safe place. It's like when they're on their floor, like my 2-year-old, and she's just like wailing. I'm like, okay, we've like completely lost access to
Yeah.
that. Okay. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's helpful for me for some reason. That's putting something together in my mind right now.
Okay.
You mentioned something else about accountability, and that was actually a question I was going to ask you. I'm like, where does accountability fit into polyvagal theory? Just in
That's
general,
tough.
I'm like thinking about like
I know.
the prison systems and criminals and like, and
I
I'm just,
know.
yeah.
I've spent some time just thinking about this. I have an article on, I think it's an article on free will, because I think it's all kind of connects to it. And this is a deep conversation I've never tried to get into. So I don't know. It's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
So are you up for it, or?
I'm super up for it. I
Okay.
think about it. So yeah.
All right. Here's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
One angle of this, which is not polyvagal informed, is just as a society, how do we want to handle these things? And the best we've come up with so far is the prison system, which is not. I think it has its utility, but obviously we're not doing a very good job, and it's not serving its purpose. So it's like the
Absolutely.
function of it is, I get the function of it, but the practicality of it is not going so well. Let's put it that way. So that's just like, as a society, that's the choice we're making, more or less. Now, in a polyvagal sense, I think that there is some utility, and this is why I'm okay with timeouts.
Okay.
I think there is utility, and it makes sense that if someone violates the social agreement, social norms, the social connection, that at some point we can say, you cannot be with us anymore. And I think this philosophically can tie into the prison system. That's kind of like, you can't be in here anymore. You go away. You have to go to somewhere else. And we lock them up in prison, which is whatever. So with kids on timeout, that's the mentality. Actually, before that, so that's the prison system. Let's just talk about like friendships. Yeah. If you have a friend who somehow like they seriously violate the norms of your friendship, they cross some sort of boundary, you have every right to say, you cannot be here anymore. The friends can band together, and like five friends hanging out. If one of them violates some sort of norm, the other 4 can say, no, go away. You can't be with us anymore. Now they might say you can't be with us for now, or you can't be with us until you get some kind of help. Like maybe they're really addicted to something. It's like, you need help.
Yeah.
You cannot be a part of our life until you get help. So there is a sense of rejection there. That's not shaming. That person may feel ashamed, but I wouldn't say the friends are shaming them. So there's that. Now take that idea, and that's what I apply to timeouts, which is you've seriously broken a house rule. Like, it has to be something really serious.
Right.
Like you've hit somebody. Yeah. And so that's why we're kind of ostracizing you into, a little timeout spot for 5 minutes or whatever it is. So it's like a mini version of things that may happen later on in life with much more severe consequences. So that's the idea of, I think there's a social function to it. I do think that connects to attachment and just the evolutionary social kind of idea in general. Now, when it comes to accountability, okay, the way that first off, I don't believe people have free will.
Okay.
How does that sit with you? First off, we have to like.
I mean, that sits pretty well with me. So,
Okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you into this stuff? Like the.
I love this stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. All right. Well, I'm super curious to see where you land on this as well. So I would say we don't have ultimately free will. I think it feels like free will. I think it feels like choice, and I think that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I don't think we have free will. I would say that I'm pretty materialistic about biology. I don't believe in a soul.
Okay.
I'm an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
You okay with all that so far?
I'm very much okay with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say, as best I know, that life and our choices are like dominoes falling, and
Yeah.
I don't think I'm choosing to do. I feel like all this stuff just has led us in this direction from the moment of the Big Bang, and whatever happened before that, I don't know. Okay, so there's that.
Yes.
I'm trying to set up an argument here.
This is helpful. Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. So part of being human, we evolved into this state or our biology. I guess I'm not sure how to put that. We evolved to be who we are right now, right?
Yes.
Part of us is that we're a mammal, but part of that is that we are just a living organism comprised of cells.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Okay.
Fair.
The basic biological function of a cell, or of any living, I would say living organism, even like DNA and whatnot, is to duplicate, right? Okay, so but to duplicate, we have to survive. So for us, so let's bring it back to us. Part of us surviving is being self-regulated. Part of us surviving is optimizing our health and growth and restoration, as Dr. Porges puts it.
Okay.
And in order to do that, we have to have access to our safety state. So I don't believe we choose to be in our safety state. I don't even think we choose to go that direction. It feels like it, but I don't think we do. So I would say that as an organism, we are biologically compelled to self-regulate. So we don't choose that. We are always compelled. We are always in a state of impulse to self-regulate. All kinds of stuff gets in the way. Trauma gets in the way. People in our homes, all kinds of stuff, right? So even that stuck defensive state, even that traumatized state, I would say still has an impulse to self-regulate, climb its ladder back to the top of its ladder.
Yes.
Okay. So when we feel like we're choosing something, like if we feel like we're choosing to do something that's healthy for our system, really what I would say our thoughts are now aligning with our biological impulse.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So I would say the impulse is already there, and we're not consciously not choosing to align our thoughts. Our thoughts will eventually align with the biological impulse to regulate, to self-regulate, and then to be a co-regulator for others. So I'm putting pieces out here. Like I said, I've never tried talking about this. So
yeah. So in that moment, would you say that so in that moment, are we actively trying, are we even doing things? Are we choosing to do the things to climb the ladder? Or is that just that you're saying that's just our impulse? That's just what we
I think it feels like a choice.
It feels like a choice.
Yeah. I think that's good enough. And I think we have true experiences. I am feeling this. I am talking with you. This is, as best I can tell, this is real. And that's good enough for me. I can't complain about that. So I would say that so I'm not perfectly well regulated right now.
Yeah.
But my biology wants to be.
Yes.
And so all of my life history stuff has come up to this moment.
Yeah.
Which has filled me with narratives and top-down narratives that prevent me from regulating further. Okay. But ultimately, my biology wants to regulate to its safe and social state. Part of this is my top-down stuff. Is stopping that from fully happening. Yeah. Part of that is bottom-up stuff is stopping that from fully happening. So it's like we get stuck in these not dysregulated, but we get stuck in these not fully regulated states, I guess. Some of us flat out dysregulation. So ultimately, if I could slow down enough to listen to what my body needs in this moment, I could self-regulate. Now, the question is, am I choosing to slow down enough? Or is the impulse already there and now I'm realizing it? And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm conscious enough to sit back and watch that happen. Not so that does that make sense at all?
It is making sense. It's like I feel so torn in this because there is definitely a very large part of me that just believes that like all of our experiences, everything that has happened up until this point, just leads us to whatever the next thing is,
Yeah.
right? Like I
Yeah.
don't know the word for that. Leads
Yeah.
us, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like I very much feel that deeply. And I also hate the idea that like I am not actively choosing these things.
It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
It's super uncomfortable. Yeah.
But it doesn't negate the reality that it feels like it. And we
Yeah.
are experiencing what seems to be choice. But I mean, ultimately, like we don't have free will. I can't not choose to fly. I mean, obviously, we don't have full free will.
Right. Sure, sure,
I'm
sure.
obviously limited by what I'm physically capable of doing. I'm
Yeah.
obviously limited by means in my life, money and capability and all kinds of stuff. So the idea of free will is nonsense. We obviously don't have that. So
Right.
the best we have is what feels like choice. I think what feels like choice within a whole bunch of confines. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, we cannot escape the fact that our biology has this impulse to self regulate. So we are defined, in my opinion, that is the defining characteristic of every single one of us, like evolution, survival, and
Yes.
reproduction. Like we cannot escape that. So within all those confines, if you want to call that choice or free will, fine. It doesn't
Yeah.
seem like it logically, but it feels like it, and I'm okay with that. But yeah,
Yeah.
there is this idea, there is this sort of for me like a realization of, oh crap.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
think about it that way. Yeah.
Would
Okay.
you say then that the thing that makes it more difficult then for some people to, self-regulate or go there than others is like that their historical events that have led them up until this point, the
Yeah,
stories, the narratives, all the things.
historical events
Okay.
and life potential, environment, all kinds of stuff get in the way.
Okay.
The kids that
Okay.
I work with that are from inner city, the city I live in is not all that great. So we have a good area, but the kids I work with don't.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
just don't. And so their capacity to self-regulate is there, but can you do that in the environment you live in? Can you do that in a home where there's a complete lack of co-regulation, like, or even the opposite of that and downright abuse? So it's the biology, it can do it,
Yeah.
but severely limited by what you have at hand, obviously.
Yeah. And that is really hard for me when it comes to like criminalizing things then, because
Right.
then I see those kids at your school and I'm just like, man, they just were
I know.
not dealt the same cards that a lot of us were
Right.
dealt. And I struggle with then like punishing them for now their biology for where it's at.
I cannot disagree with you. Excuse me. No, I mean, I cannot disagree with you. And I don't think I have a good answer to that.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't think it's the current prison systems for sure.
No,
But
no. But I
maybe
mean,
a poly.
that's like every politician will say they have the answer to that. No one has the
No
answer
one
to
has
that.
the answer to that. I definitely
No,
don't have that. Yeah, but
no. And that becomes a whole political thing I'm not going to get into.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. But then
yeah,
on the same hand, you're also saying, even with that all being said, I still do believe that accountability is super important and that there has to be some sort of account. So there is like some sort of choice in this, not choice or this,
there, look at it this way, maybe look at it this way. We are a social species. Think
Mhm.
about it like this. So think about like we're a school of fish and we all
Okay.
swim in the same direction. If one of those schools of fish, if one of those fish
Mhm.
deviates, the
Mhm.
others might say like, no, get back in line. Come on, like get
Mhm.
back, right?
Yep.
No, I know fish aren't, I don't think they're all that complex, but if one of those fish starts to like bump into the other ones, they might check it and like knock it off course and say like, get out of here or get back in line. And
Yeah.
so if you look at it that way, as we're a social species and we're ideally putting ourselves in check, each other in check in a healthy, productive way to get back in
Oh,
line. Now that's a very scary idea because who has the right to do that? Obviously,
mm,
if we have a society full of self-regulated adults who
mhm.
can do that out of love to each other, I think it's fine. But we don't have that at all,
Yeah.
and it also sets up a scary uh, layering of like, we're the self-regulated ones who can tell you how to behave and put you in check, and you're the dysregulated one. So, and that's the issue I have with the whole DSM mental health stuff, is like, we're the ones who are treating you. You're the ones who have the problem, not us. And so polyvagal theory, I think any paradigm or any school of thought can lead that direction. So I look at it as, socially we're putting each other in check in the best, just the most possible light that could be done. Like, that might be the healthiest way of looking at things. So as far as accountability, we're basically saying, you swam out of line, like, get back in line. And
I like that.
That's kind of the function of it, I would think. So that's what accountability could look like. Now, for us, we are a social species, and we do have feelings like guilt and shame. And those feelings help keep us in line intrinsically. If we are self-regulated enough to feel them and then act on them. Tonight, my son, I had to repeat myself a couple times. The third time I raised my voice, and he looked at me like it hurt him, and I felt guilty. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, dude. Sorry, daddy's grumpy right now. Sorry. So it's like, I'm self-regulated enough to feel guilt, which, so that's a good thing. Guilt is a good thing. Feeling shame for horrible acts is a good thing. Potentially, there's a social function to it.
I agree.
Yeah. So we have the accountability of the society to the individual in the brightest possible light. It does not work out that way whatsoever, because we're all traumatized people trying to keep each other in line, and that doesn't work out very well. And then we have the individual function as part of a society of guilt and shame, which help keep us within the social norms.
That's super helpful.
Does that?
Yeah, it is. I really like the idea of us being, like this social network. I don't like that term, but this that is, we are kind of supporting and helping each other stay on track in that way. That as accountability does feel
ideally.
Ideally, that does feel like a beautiful way to look at it. And even in parenting, that feels helpful.
Right. Yeah. So that has a nice tie into parenting then. And this all depends on if we have parents that are self-regulated enough to keep kids within some sort of acceptable norm. Now, this can easily get abused, and parents go all kinds of different directions with this. And for them, it makes sense. Like, I'm keeping them in line. It's like, So it doesn't always work out very well. You have to have people that are, I think, self-regulated enough to be able to come from empathy and to utilize their own guilt to make amends and repair their relationship with their kids, and to use, I think, consequences in a productive, healthy way. So there's all kinds of caveats that come into this, I think. But the philosophy of it, I think, makes sense. At least none of us are it seems like the people who want to lead us are they shouldn't be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And so we end up with this society of, it doesn't work out the way it should. So do we address free will?
So free will.
Did I address that?
It's, I think I just keep coming back to the idea that it is just hard for me to, because you were saying that you do not believe people have free will, right?
I don't.
So it is,
but it feels like it, and it looks like it, and it
looks like it.
Yeah,
and I agree with that. Okay. I do agree with that. I have a hard time with it.
It's uncomfortable, I suppose. I mean, at first it's uncomfortable, but then when you pull back and look at it, it's like, well, I feel like I have free will, and that's good enough. When it comes to parenting, I could say my kids don't have free will, and therefore, on some level, are not accountable. But I don't see how that helps anybody. I don't see how that will help them to be productive members of society. So it's like, I also don't see the function of that thought either. I don't see the function of pulling back and just letting them, harm others. I do believe that we have innate human rights that should not be violated, and being hit. I think if my kids grow up to be people that hit strangers, like I obviously did not do a very good job as a parent, and they're violating rights that I think people are born with. So
Yeah.
no, I mean, even though they don't exactly have free will, it's close enough to not violate someone else's rights, and I can work with my kids on that.
Mhm. So it's kind of like you believe, like in your core, you're like, I don't think people have free will, but I'm still going to operate in a way almost as if I'm treating them as if they do have free will. Like you're
Yeah,
the teenagers you work with, you're like, I'm going to
yeah,
treat you as if you have free will, and
yeah. I
my
don't.
kid treat you as if you have free will.
Yeah, I think telling us ourselves that we have choice is pretty powerful,
It is
and
powerful.
responsibility. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like even if we don't have free will, you still are alive. You still do affect other people and yourself,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
ultimately you do have options, and so that might feel like choice, and maybe choice and free will are different. So it's
Hmm.
like if you do have options at hand, and some more than others.
Hmm.
So there's enough there for us to work with, and to discuss a concept of choice or responsibility.
Okay.
And so I
Hmm.
think those are really important values that we can pass on and utilize so that we can affect each other positively, just generally
Right.
positively.
Right. Because it wouldn't be helpful to just be like, well,
I don't think
you're life
so.
determined. So just like to have at it, like obviously that's not going to be.
So the idea of, life is predetermined. I mean, we have no idea what that looks like. So
Mhm.
it completely feels like it's not, and that's fine. But it's either that. So let's just say it's purely materialistic and it's dominoes falling, and here we are.
Mhm.
The other option is, well, at least from certain worldviews, like let's say God chose this, it's
Mhm.
still predetermined.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
still have no real choice. They say we have free will, but God
Totally.
chose this path for every single one of us if he's real.
Yeah.
uh, I don't see the difference. Personally, I
Mhm.
don't see the difference.
So, but yeah, I think yeah, I like the idea of just holding the two together. Like, yes, like no, we do not have free will. And also like we can still operate in a way that we are acting as if we kind of do because that is functional and helpful. And for my clients, that's helpful. Like my clients, I don't know, it's
Yeah,
helpful for me to know that like I feel like I have choice somehow.
I've totally. Yeah, I think yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's very empowering. I mean, to feel like and I think a lot of kids I work with, they feel like they don't have choice. They feel like they don't have power
Yeah.
or agency, and it's disastrous. It doesn't help to tell someone that they have no capacity to make their life better. And
Yeah.
so I think that idea is helpful. It can be
Mhm.
helpful at least. But if you think about like, I've seen dogs or primates or other mammals, when their kids act out of line, they seem to put them in check,
True.
don't they? Like, have
Yeah.
you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't think of any great examples, but I've seen videos where it's like, oh, they're being parents, and
Yeah.
they might be more physical than I would hope other parents would be, but
Sure.
like
Yeah.
that's their way of putting their kids in check. So I wouldn't say that the little puppy or little chimpanzee baby or whatever you call them is making a choice. I wouldn't
Right.
say they have free will, but still their parents are putting them in check. It's like, no, you fall back in line. You're not following our social norms.
Okay. I think with parenting, it can often be like, I'm going to put you in check because you are embarrassing me and
That's different.
and
Yeah.
that's super different than I'm going to put you in check because like we are a society, we are a
Yeah.
connected group and I
Yeah.
want to help support that. That just feels super different.
It's way different. Yeah. So you have to be extremely honest with yourself
Mhm.
about your parenting.
Mhm.
And tonight when I snapped at my son for repeating myself, that was
Mhm.
completely my issue. It had nothing to do with him. He was just being a 6-year-old kid.
Sure.
That was
Yeah.
completely my issue. I deserved the look. I deserved feeling guilt, and he
Sure.
deserved me apologizing to him. So
Mhm.
I think we have to be extremely honest with ourselves, and that falls upon us. The responsibility is on us to be self-regulated enough to be
Yeah.
able to catch ourselves and say, it wasn't you. That was on me. I was afraid of being embarrassed, and I shouldn't have treated you that way. And sorry,
Yep.
whatever it sounds like.
Yep.
Or to think about things ahead of
Yeah.
time, knowing if I'm going to be embarrassed in the situation, I better think of a plan right now on how to handle that for myself
Totally.
or how to avoid it or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's super helpful. That's super helpful. That's a really good distinction. Yeah, I don't want my kids to hit because I want them to be a part of this. But I also get mad at my kids sometimes because I'm like, you're embarrassing me at the grocery store. And it's like, yeah, is this about me? Is
Okay.
this about them? What's this about?
And the grocery store conversation is kind of fun.
Mhm.
There's not a great answer for it. I feel like I've done pretty well with my kids, and my daughter
Yeah.
used to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
And but I put her in check in my own way. I use
Yeah.
timeouts.
Mhm.
and we would leave the store, and I would tell her things like, we are not leaving. We're not, we're going to leave. We're going to do
Mhm.
timeout. We're going back in. We are not going home until this is done. And eventually
Yeah.
she got it. And if it was not an
Yeah.
issue, but eventually she got it. And then I would do other things, like I would involve her in the shopping and help me
Yeah.
pick out stuff. So I would do all that stuff too.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so the store stuff, is the behavior embarrassing to you because of your own stuff, or
Mhm.
is your embarrassment an indicator that the behavior is out of line for the
Mm.
social norms? And
Yeah.
that's a tough differentiator. But if a kid's yelling and throwing stuff, that's embarrassing,
Yeah.
but it's also wildly inappropriate.
Yeah. That's not going to help them as they
Yeah.
grow up. That,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
No, right. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah. And it violates basic social norms. And
Yeah.
so if your kid's dressing in plaid and polka dot and you feel embarrassed about that, that's just your own issue.
Right. For
Like, get
sure.
over it. I would say get over it. That's
Yeah.
my advice.
Totally. Yeah.
But it kind of violates social norms in a way, but they're not significant. They're not worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not. That's a
Although
good
people
way.
dress all kinds of ways now. Yeah.
I know. Oh, yeah. People are. Yeah. That's super helpful. That's helpful. That's giving me a good lens to look through this from. Thank you.
I did
Yeah.
not expect a conversation about free will and
I know.
and whatnot. I
Oh
did
my
not expect
gosh.
that at all.
I know. That's funny that it kind of went that way.
I think
Yeah.
it kind of, once you learn about this stuff,
Yeah.
it kind of has to. And
It has
I,
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that my mind keeps going toward the. I've been doing a lot of research or listening recently about consciousness, and
Mm. Who do
I'm
you listen to?
like, I've been on YouTube, just a bunch of lectures. It's just like, I don't know, neuroscientists. I don't know who they are,
Yeah.
but
Cool.
no one in particular. It's just whoever I stumble upon. I'm like, okay, what do you have to say? So there's like all these ideas about computational something or other and fundamental consciousness, and there's different theories, and I'm like, no one's defining what consciousness is
Yeah.
in order to
Mhm.
at least to begin to talk about it. How
Mhm.
did I get on this? So I've been learning about this and trying to figure out, okay, what is consciousness? Because as psychologists or therapists, we don't do a good job of explaining these things. And that's in my episode tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to talk about
Oh,
that.
nice. Okay.
So, but then there's the polyvagal theory, which to me lays out how on some level we really are just like organisms reacting, especially with the concept or the idea of neuroception, that
Yes.
these inputs come in
Yes.
and we have this autonomic shift that we don't choose. And so it's like, how well, I don't know what consciousness is, but how conscious can you be if there's all these things happening outside of your awareness, and the state that you're in is not exactly your choice and is a reaction to other stuff and your past stuff. And
Yes.
a lot of this is like on an organismic level. There's things that are predictably, like if someone stares at you with wide eyes and flat affect, you don't choose to feel freaked out. You just feel freaked out because we're just organisms. And I think that word fits better than mammals or humans. Like, it just takes away the idealism of it. It's like, we're just organisms. We're these cellular structures that have kind of predictable reactions on some level to external stimuli. And that, I've been kind of stuck on that recently. That's kind of where my mind's been. And it really is, that to me fits in with the whole idea of a lack of free will, true free will at least, and these dominoes falling kind of idea. Does that make sense? How it all for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm circling back to the neuroception piece, right? So it's kind of like, okay, so their neuroception goes off. It's like something biological in their organism happens and they just react, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's happening. Yeah. And so then my mind goes to like,
well they have an autonomic shift.
They have an yep.
And then everything shifts along with it. Yeah.
And everything shifts along with it. So, so if for, criminals, that happens, then the behavior comes with that autonomic shift, right? Something happens, maybe.
Perhaps. More or less, yeah. Yeah.
More or less. Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
well, actually, I would say no. I would say no. Actually, I would argue that people who are living a life where they have more criminal activity are probably in a chronic state of actual dysregulation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
just a neuroceptive cue and then they like commit a crime. It's like they're already kind of there. And then maybe one thing does happen or there's that one last little tip. And now they do, violate some sort of serious,
Yes.
the flavor's already there. They're already kind of existing in a fight state. And it's just that
Totally.
one thing will, send them over.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah. And maybe I shouldn't even use, yeah, crime is, and I'm even thinking about my kid. Like,
Mm,
so say my kid's like in a ventral place and then neuroception, I give her a bad look. She goes into fight or flight. She's like, dysregulated, does something that maybe she wouldn't typically do. And then I'm just like, there is this piece of me that's like, how do I discipline a biological response? How do I punish a bio
yeah.
with people who are, doing disastrous things in community? It's like, why, like,
We
you're
are,
a biological response. I know. I feel like I'm kind of going in circles, but I'm having a hard time with it.
I got you. So
Yeah.
I think I would say it depends on what it is. So I have to admit, I don't have to admit, but I will admit, I totally triggered my daughter. It was a couple days ago. I was in the pool, and if you give me a squirt gun, I'll just irritate the heck out of you until I get a reaction out of you.
Perfect. Yes.
So my son and I, we have goggles on. We're shooting each other, and it's all fun. We're both in the pool. My daughter
Yeah.
came out with her clothes on. She's like, "Hey, I can't figure this thing out on my phone," and I squirted the heck out of her. And I didn't stop. She's like, "Daddy, stop!" I'm like, "I have to get a reaction." And that's just totally me being immature,
Totally.
dysregulated, maybe dysregulated. And so eventually she like flipped out, and I was like, "Oh, I went too far. Oops." So she violated some norm, and like she stormed in the house, and I heard her slam something. And I
Mhm.
was like, that's she's in a sense choosing, but I totally prompted it. I egged her the heck on. So I didn't give
Mhm.
her a consequence. That was on me. I took the blame for that
Yeah.
one.
Sure.
So
Okay. Yeah.
and when I went in, I told like, Bella, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was being stupid and you didn't deserve that. And I went way
Yeah.
too far with
Yeah.
teasing you. I'm so sorry. And I meant it. And so no, I didn't give her a consequence. I completely egged her on. If I had not done that, and it wasn't like we could always trace our behaviors back to something,
Mhm.
but that was clearly my fault. Like I pushed and pushed and
Mhm.
pushed, or I squirted and squirted and squirted
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
until I got
Totally.
my
Yeah.
reaction and I regretted it. So, for that, like, no, I'm not going to, she does not deserve a consequence for that.
Mhm. Mhm.
For other things, because we could always say, well, something led to it.
Mhm.
And there's no end to that though.
I
So
know.
we could say that, my son, he hit somebody at school.
Mhm.
And what led up to that was that morning he was, let's say he didn't get a Pop Tart and he was rushed out of the door. And so he
Mhm.
was already amped up. And
Mhm.
maybe it led to him hitting somebody at school, which he didn't do, but it's just pretending. So something
Yeah.
led to it. Okay, fine. And you could say that something led to me as a parent pushing him louder that morning, maybe.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. But something led to that too. And so there's always obviously like a chain reaction and a link that goes back as far as time. As far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned, like you could always something, there's always an antecedent.
Mhm.
But at
Mhm.
some point, I feel like we just say, like, in this moment, all that's true, yes, but you did choose or do something that resembles choice. And
Yeah.
so I, as part of a family or as part of a society, am going
Mhm.
to put you in check to get back on track. Like I feel like we have to do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Otherwise, what if you could just blame the previous person or moment or generation? What where does that lead to?
Mhm.
You know what I
Yep.
mean?
And couldn't that in theory like shape their neuroception for the next time? Like, oh, last time I
Oh
did this,
yeah, yeah.
something bad happened. So I'm not going to do that.
I would say, yeah, it shapes their expectations. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely.
Which is helpful. Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, we're giving these consequences because we also want to shape their expectation for what could happen next time.
Hmm. So if maybe this will help as well. So let's say our kids are not agents of free will and are not
Okay.
making their own choices to do whatever they're doing.
Mhm.
in that same vein, we could say that, okay, well, I'm a parent who's not a free will and I'm choosing to give you a consequence, right? I'm enacting a consequence because it's
Mhm.
popping up into my brain and I can
Mhm.
rationalize that's the best thing, or my body's doing that. Okay, so
Mhm.
we're both not agents of free will, and this is what you're doing, and this is what I'm doing. It evens
Mhm.
out, and let's see what happens next time.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
say that.
There's like something that just feels kind of just like sad about the idea that we don't have free will at all. Like, does it make,
Um,
and my husband would be like, no,
yeah,
it's not that. It's just the way it is. But for me, I'm like, man, that's sad to me.
I think there's. I think that there is initially some level of sadness there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess,
Okay.
but it doesn't change the fact that everything feels like free will, and like, what's the
Yeah.
difference? Whether I can
Yeah.
rationalize it as free will or not is a fun exercise, but still feels like it. It still feels like
It's true.
I have the potential to make change. So no, I'm not too sad about it at all. I would say um, initially there's a feeling of sadness, but you
Mhm.
kind of have to sit with that. I would say initially there's a feeling of sadness when it comes to, like, when I admitted I was an atheist, as a teenager, there was a feeling of like, oh crap, and
Mhm.
being small, and sadness, and well, what's the point of all this? And there was an initial feeling of that. But then there comes, for me, there came this big sense of appreciation, at least
Mhm.
with life. I don't know about free will,
Yeah.
but at least with life, like, it just like, I'm alive. Like,
Yeah.
wow, the chances of me being able to experience this, whether it's free or not, or whether it's from other people with free will, or whatever, like, I still get to experience. I still get to experience love. It feels like love. I get to
Mhm.
experience attachment and bonding with my kids, and yeah, maybe it's all chemical stuff and dominoes, but it feels real.
Mhm. It's good
Okay,
perspective.
that's good enough. I get to have that. I get to experience that. And so there's a sense, a deep sense of appreciation for me,
Yeah.
And with when it comes to free will, initially there is this sense of like, oh, that kind of sucks, but
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, well, how much closer can I get to what myself as an organism is
Hmm.
supposed to be? Because this is not it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I'm supposed to have
Yeah.
a fuller beard. No, that's not what I mean. I'm supposed to and thicker eyebrows. I don't have thick. No, it's my ourselves as organisms. This is not it. This is
Mhm.
the way we interact with each other, and like, this is not it. So how much closer can we get to the way
Mhm.
things are, quote unquote, supposed to be, or the ideal evolutionary sense of things? I don't know if we can. I don't know if we will. I don't know if we lost it.
Mhm.
Maybe it was there. Probably was, and we just
Mhm.
lost it. I don't know if we can get back to it. I have a sense that the closer we get to truly self-regulated, connected social species, the
Mhm.
further away that we'll get from conscious thought, like words in our brain. I feel like those will drift
Mhm.
away from that, and that's a whole different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool to
Yeah,
think about. Would you say then that like that the ultimate goal, like as far as you see like the world and people and your clients, is like just helping them, like supporting just like that safe and social connected state? Like that would be kind of like your life philosophy, is like, I want people to like that would be the ideal world, is if we are all closer to that.
I think I would think that it is being closer to being anchored enough in the safety state
Yeah. Okay.
to also feel like we have to have flight fight, we have to have shutdown, not just as survival, but those are central to play and stillness.
Yeah.
The mixed
Hmm.
states, right? Are you familiar with those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have, it's not like we should always exist in a safe and social state. That's not the goal. And honestly, that sounds awful to me. I
Yeah.
don't
It'd be
think
kind
I
of
would.
boring.
Was that?
It might be kind of boring.
I think it would be. I really think it would be. Like, there has to be, for us to grow, like, doesn't there have to be some level of challenge?
1,000,000% I agree with
Right.
that. Mhm. Mhm.
What the hell was I talking? Oh, so I think that we have to, obviously, we have to have these other um, pathways. We have to have flight fight. We have to have the sympathetic. We have to have the dorsal vagal in order to experience stillness and play. So I think being as anchored as possible in our safety state is maybe the goal.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's helpful.
Okay. I think it is the ideal for the species, is to have, for ourselves as like human beings, or all mammals, is to have more access to that because that's where health and growth and restoration happens. That's where critical thinking happens. That's where all the good stuff happens.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say that.
Okay. Well, it's more just like, I'm curious about how you work with clients now, like as of like,
Oh, wow.
has everything shifted? I mean, I'm just curious about that. Like, are you pretty much pure polyvagal theory?
Yeah. Well, in a sense, I'll answer it just like in a few minutes because that's definitely a bigger conversation and a fun one.
Yeah.
I would say that this is like my lens for the world.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, this is how I see my clients. But the techniques and modalities and whatnot that I use I pull from everything. So I do a lot more somatic kind of stuff in that sense.
Cool. Yeah.
And I would say that's more directly in my mind connected to polyvagal theory. But even when I do CBT kind of stuff or motivational kind of stuff or just behavioral kind of stuff, like it's there. But so it's kind of how I'm viewing things and I'm seeing my clients.
Okay.
But I still pull from it, but as whatever's necessary in that situation for that client.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of how I've been with it too.
Yeah. I mean, polyvagal theory, like, it's not a modality. It's just the science. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, fellow Stucknut, for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed being a part of it with Kelly. Oh, and by the way, this is in no means a complete and coherent argument about any of these things. Like I said in the episode, this is stuff that I don't talk about, but I enjoy doing so. So if you have something you would change or add or take away from what I said or what Kelly said in this episode, reach out to me. My email is justinlmft@gmail.com. I would love to know what you thought about this. Again, you can find out more about Kelly in the description. It's kellylaportacounseling.com. And then you can head on over to justinlmft.com as well to find out more about working with me or meeting with me in a professional consult. justinlmft.com. Otherwise, thank you so much again for listening. Bye.